Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast. I am Ryan Wormeli, joined this morning by a couple of Andrews, but don't call them Andrew. It's Andrew Erickson and Andrew Cooper. Coop joining us from Fantasy Alarm. Thank you so much for making the time. I am thanking all the guests because I know it's just a super busy time of year. September is when everybody's working just right and left, doing shows right and left, rankings right and left. It's just a very busy time. So I appreciate you making the time for us, Coop. We are here Tuesday morning. We are talking some buy low, sell high running backs. We are also going to talk about some of the most traded running backs that have happened in the last couple of days. So we're going to jump right in because we have a pretty stocked show today. And I want to start with you guys with the most traded running back right now. And it's actually Jerome Ford. So a week ago, he was the hot button player to talk about when it came to waivers. This week, it's when it comes to trades. And Erickson, I actually want to kind of start with you on the buy, sell, or hold because we talked a lot last week about how his value is never going to be lower than after this first week, given the matchup. Now, he got in the end zone a couple times, so he actually wasn't the worst start. But like most running backs do, struggled against the Tennessee defense. Are you buying, selling, or holding on Jerome Ford right now, Erickson?
I'm selling on Jerome Ford. Easy sell for me. Look, he had the perfect run out for someone that spent a lot of fab on him because he scored 2 touchdowns. But he was not the first Cleveland Browns player to get a carry in that game. He wasn't the second. He wasn't the third. He was the 4th player to get a carry for the Cleveland Browns in week 3. Like, if this is the RB1 usage that people were hoping for from Jerome Ford, when you're looking at his snap share, I mean, he played a little bit over than 50% of the snaps. I mean, Kareem Hunt, had a decent role when they said he was going to be on a pitch count. So is Kareem Hunt just going to be in this beta role the entire season? Is he going to get ramped up? Because coming straight off the couch, Kareem Hunt was playing a legitimate snaps in this game. He also was targeted at a hyper high rate. So for me, you have a bye week coming up for Jerome Ford that's coming up soon. I think that he's a sell for me, especially because you can move him because he scored 2 touchdowns. That's the selling point that you use to get off of Jerome Ford, who currently ranks in the bottom 2 in terms of rushing success rate this year. Basically, he had that one big run and has pretty much done nothing besides that. So Jerome Ford, for me, is someone that I would easily try to sell high on, especially after all the touchdowns.
Yeah, Coop, Ford's currently in that game, 10 carries, 18 yards, and a touchdown. 2 catches, 33 yards, and the touchdown. He did have the most carries on the team, but like Erickson mentioned, a little more Kareem Hunt than I think we were expecting. Are you buying, selling, or holding on Ford right now?
I'm with him, man. I'm selling. And you got to consider the narrative of it as well, because this guy Kareem Hunt was super unhappy. He was trying to shoot his way out of town last year. He was hesitant to come back this year. And for them to actually convince him to come back, they had to sell him on the fact that he was actually going to play and have a role. Can you imagine if this guy was unhappy, didn't come back to the team, and then they convinced him to come back to the team and didn't give him the ball, especially with this incentive-laden contract? There's no question that Kareem Hunt's going to be heavily involved this year. So for me, if I can take a guy like Jerome Ford, who I almost certainly got off waivers, or I stashed for this exact reason, and turn that into something that I can definitively trust, that's found money, right? So anytime I can grab a guy like that is unproven, we don't know what the role is going to be, and flip him for something I can trust a little more, I do it right away.
Okay, so I pulled out some names here, guys. I want to ask if you would trade Jerome Ford too. Based on the fact that you're both emphatically selling, it sounds like you will make these trades. These are players that are ranked in very similar ranges rest of season as Ford, and this might change because I have DeAndre Swift included here, who we now have another week of data from last night's games. But would you trade Jerome Ford, and Coop, I'll start with you, for Raheem Mostert, Javonte Williams, or DeAndre Swift, or is it all of them?
So it might be all of them. With Javonte Williams, if you look at where he's at and the direction he's trending, he went from basically being the secondary back in the first game to splitting fairly evenly with P. Ryan getting more snaps on the pass downs, him getting more snaps on the rundowns. This week, they split the pass snaps evenly, and he got pretty much all the carries. He's trending in the right direction. If they were even for to stay in this spot, that's basically the usage we get out of Aaron Jones, where he gets pretty much most of the work there, and there's some goal line carries taken away. So Javonte Williams is a guy I'm definitely interested in because he's trending in the right direction. DeAndre Swift, obviously, right now, the question is whether the DeAndre Swift owner is going to give him to you, right? Because he comes out, has a monster week 2, and then backs it up again with another super high efficiency week. Looked great this week. One thing you're missing with DeAndre Swift is that Nick Sirianni does not like calling running back screens. You look at Doug Peterson before him, dialed up 40 running back screens his last time coaching this team. Last year, Sirianni only dialed up like 11 to the running backs. And once again, they're not really doing a ton of it. That's the one thing you're kind of missing. Mostert is the one that's closest to me because, I mean, Devon Achane came out and crushed. And people forget that Jerome Ford is going to come back and probably be that goal line plotter. You ask yourself, we look at what are the high leverage situations? First down, right? Just being out there in first down gives you more opportunities. Being out there for goal line is if there's a pass interference in the end zone, who do they send down there to plunge it in? It'll probably be Jeff Wilson. And then, of course, 2-minute drill, because 2-minute drill, unlike third downs, you're out there for the whole thing. They put you out there. You're out there for every snap. There's audibles. There's multiple plays called in huddle. There's no time to substitute. You get all those snaps. And to me, Raheem Mostert now might not be a lock to get all those in any of those situations. I do love the way he's playing. So I don't know. I'll have to ask you guys if you would make that trade. I think it's about even for me. But the other two, I'm definitely doing.
Yeah, Erickson, I know you've been a big sell on Raheem Mostert guy. So would you trade Ford for Mostert, or are these two guys you want to sell?
Yeah, I would still make that trade. Trading Jerome Ford for Raheem Mostert. I think that, I mean, Ford's schedule, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but it's horrible. I mean, they're playing the Ravens this week, which I don't think is like necessarily a bad matchup, but then it's the bye week, then you have the 49ers, and then the Colts. Like, that's horrible for running backs. So, yeah, I think Raheem Mostert just has more value anyway. So, I mean, this is one of those classic scenarios where if I can flip Jerome Ford for Raheem Mostert and then trade Raheem Mostert for DeAndre Swift or like one of like something like that,
Right.
like that's what I would do. So
Yeah.
there's no
Arbitrage.
reason you have to be held to the guy you're targeting, but it's like you can make multiple trades. So if I think, and especially right now, I mean, I don't see how Raheem Mostert doesn't have more of trade value right now coming off a 4-touchdown game. I know Achane was obviously great, but just the value that he has right now, which I try to consider when I do my rest of the season rankings, because people are looking at them, not necessarily because they're drafting these players, but for trade value. So even if I'm not the highest on Raheem Mostert, I realize that the marketplace is going to be high on him because he just had a 4-touchdown game. So that's why I have him ranked clearly ahead of Jerome Ford, and I would definitely take Raheem Mostert over Ford.
Quickly, Erickson, Ford or Javonte, who would you rather have?
Javonte. I would have all those other guys over Jerome Ford.
We are back with another week of football, and DraftKings Sportsbook is keeping us in on the NFL action with great offers every single game day. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Throw $5 down on any of this week's epic matchups to walk away an instant winner. And DraftKings isn't stopping there. All customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Football is more fun when you're in on the action, so download the app now and sign up with code FANTASYPROS. New customers can bet just $5 to get $200 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. With code FANTASYPROS, the crown is yours. Guys, let's go to our other most traded running back here, and that's Brian Robinson of the Commanders. So, Erickson, I'll start with you this time. Buying, selling, or holding on Robinson?
So for me, he's actually a buy off of, his worst game of the season. And when you look at the peripherals to what he did this past week, I mean, this was like the worst case scenario for Brian Robinson. Like, the team is down absolutely big. He's not involved in the passing game whatsoever. He played less than 40% of the snaps because Antonio Gibson is taking all of the pass game work. And yet Brian Robinson's still able to get to 70 yards rushing, even though he had 10 carries. He came up just short of scoring a goal line touchdown. And, I mean, he continues to impress me as just a rusher. Like, he looks good out there when they get the ball to him. He did have one pass that he caught or a screen pass that he caught for 15 yards, but it got called back due to a penalty. And despite the fact that Gibson played over 60% of the snaps, they're not giving Gibson the ball. Like, he's like not getting any actual touches besides in the passing game. And he continues to fumble the ball. So there's a scenario where I could see Brian Robinson seeing his pass game role expanded as the season progresses, as they just kind of sour more on Antonio Gibson, because they clearly like Brian Robinson a lot. So for me, he's a buy after a bad game, because this was like the worst case scenario for him. Like, putting up 70, still getting 70 rushing yards. Again, if he had scored the touchdown, we wouldn't even really, owners probably wouldn't be as concerned about Brian Robinson, because I think that he is their bell cow back. And in games where they're just going to be more closely contested, not getting absolutely blown out, I think that he's still going to be really solid. So for me, I would buy the dip after a bad game.
What do you think, Coop?
So I got him in the hold category, which for me is a big improvement because coming into the season, I was completely off Brian Robinson. Didn't want any part of him because I thought he's a great rusher. I thought Gibson could do this at times, but Brian Robinson has proven that he is more of in the bell cow category than he is in just a one down. I was worried that we were going to get like an Alfred Morris or a Jeremy Hill that was catching no passes, doing nothing. Week 1, he comes out, catches a touchdown pass, proves that that's not going to be the case. So this guy, he clearly can do everything. My concern is kind of twofold here. One is that we did see Antonio Gibson getting the pass work here. The other is that, as Erickson points out, not every game is going to be like this, but there might be a lot of them because if you look at their schedule, you've got 2 more games versus the Eagles. The Patriots are on the schedule. The Dolphins are on the schedule. And the season ends like this. Jets, 49ers, Cowboys, right? So, they have the Cowboys twice on the schedule to finish this year. So there are going to be some pretty rough games. I'm not trading Brian Robinson, but I'm also probably not going crazy to acquire him,
Okay, well, let's get some comps here. And Coop, I'll start with you here. Would you trade Brian Robinson for James Conner?
So those guys, to me, are in the same boat, except for James Conner. Just he doesn't have a Antonio Gibson to worry about. Even if they're getting crushed, I think that the Cardinals have committed to tanking, and it's going to look kind of like the Jaguars did with James Robinson, where they just said, hey, you know what, man, this here doesn't matter to us, and we have no problem just letting you play the entire game, regardless of what's happening. You're one of our best players, so that's what it is. And I think that the James Conner could have plenty of those games, for better or worse, where he just plays the whole game. I just can't see anybody on that depth chart playing over him in any situation. Of course, James Conner, you always have to worry about injury. He's never played a full season, but for now, he's getting all the work. So I think I would rather have James Conner right now.
How about Brian Robinson for Breece Hall?
That one's tough. This week was a little more promising. Week 2, they split the snaps down the middle, right? Into thirds, because it was Dalvin Cook, Breece Hall, and Michael Carter. At least we got 30 snaps out of Breece Hall compared to 15 for Cook and the other guys. But I think that's where I draw the line, where Brian Robinson at least is kind of the guy. And for the Jets right now, there isn't really the guy just yet.
And then lastly, Brian Robinson or Miles Sanders?
As Tim Robinson would say, it's illegal for you to ask me that because I am such a Miles Sanders guy that I might have to recuse myself from this question as they would do on the Supreme Court, because Miles Sanders, for me, I talked earlier about the higher leverage situations, first down, 2-minute drill, goal line. Like, even if Chuba Hubbard comes out and has a nice run here or there, or, catches a ball, I still think it's Miles Sanders' job. And as we get farther away from the groin injury, I think Miles Sanders looks more like the Miles Sanders we know and love. So I personally am just higher on Miles Sanders than most people, but I'll admit that I'm biased on that one. So
I appreciate you at least admitting it. Yes, you're being forthcoming about your biases here. Erickson, any of those 3 are you trading Brian Robinson for? Again, that's James Conner, Breece Hall, Miles Sanders.
No, I agree with Coop on Miles Sanders. That's the guy that I would probably feel the best about getting in return for Brian Robinson, because he has the pass game role. Like, we've seen it for 3 straight weeks. Miles Sanders is catching balls out of the backfield. He had 9 targets last week. I know Andy Dalton threw the ball 58 times, which isn't going to happen every single week, but they talked about Miles Sanders. He's going to be involved in the passing game all offseason. And what has he done through 3 weeks? Catch passes. Like, I think he may have already caught more passes than he all did last year. Like, I haven't checked the numbers, but it wouldn't surprise me just based on the usage that he's gotten over the first 3 weeks. So for me, I would take Miles Sanders. I do prefer Robinson over James Conner, just because James Conner is older and has an injury track record that I'm afraid is going to eventually catch up to him sooner rather than later. And Breece Hall for me is, look, I want to buy Breece Hall cheap and stash him on my bench, because I think in the second half of the season, when the Jets schedule gets easier, Breece Hall gets healthier, you're going to see this team just lean on Hall and just totally neutralize the other running backs. They're not going to use Cook. They're not going to use Carter. It's going to be the Breece Hall show. And I think Breece Hall could still be a league winner down the stretch once he gets healthy. But for right now, like, you're really not starting him with any sort of confidence, just based on how bad the Jets offense looks with Zach Wilson at the quarterback. So Breece Hall, for me, it's still Brian Robinson's probably just too much, because he has too much value right now, where I want to buy Breece Hall probably for cheaper.
Let's jump over to our buy low running backs here. You guys each sent me your top choice for buy low running backs, and we'll get to the sell high running backs after this. So, Coop, I will start with you. Who is your number 1 buy low running back right now?
Yeah, my buy low running back is Josh Jacobs, man. And when I look at these players, right? And everyone loves within the Twitter community to look at the advanced metrics. I enjoy the machine learning stuff, the expected stuff, all those numbers, right? But that's usually what I use to make my decisions in Dynasty. My long-term plays, I go out and get the Tony Pollards of the world, in Dynasty a couple of years ago because we're hoping that he's going to get the full role. Now that he has, he's awesome. But people were buying players like that in years they're competing and in redraft, and opportunity is king at this position. I look at Josh Jacobs. He's got the full job himself, and game script has really crushed his team. You've seen it with Davante Adams as well. The first week they came out, they only ran like 52 plays. In week 2, they ran 40 offensive plays. 40. The average in this league is like 65. And there were some teams so far this year that have run over 80 plays in games, 84, 85, and that's without overtime. So if a team comes out and runs 40 offensive plays, that's like playing half a game. This week we saw them go up to even close to an average number, and you saw what happened with Davante Adams. You saw what happened with Jacoby Myers. 20 targets, 12 targets. It's not going to happen like that every week. There's going to be weeks where this team is doing well, where they're moving the ball, and Josh Jacobs is an every down bell cow back, and we've seen what he can do last year. I think right now he's a guy that if you look at where he is in the standings, he's like a back end RB2, and I think he could easily be an RB1 again. So Josh Jacobs is the guy that I'm trying to scoop up.
Erickson, you made your pick of these, and then you tried to switch it to Jacobs, and then I informed you that Coop had already picked Jacobs,
Gotcha.
So you switched back to your original guy. But before we get to your guy, Erickson, you can share some thoughts on Jacobs as well.
Well, I mean, because Jacobs is definitely the best buy low running back. Like Coop hit the nail on the head, and I hadn't done my Jacobs like deep dive until I did the sheet, and I'm a fraud for it. But I couldn't agree more with that take, because just look at what Josh Jacobs did last year. His stat line looks almost exactly the same through the first 3 weeks. Pretty good usage, a lot of carries, not great efficiency, no touchdowns. And then week 4 last year, he just blows up, and then the rest is history. And Josh Jacobs was a league winner basically from week 4 onward. So I think that after missing training camp, not surprising that it seemed like he's getting back into shape, slow start. So for me, I think, Josh Jacobs, just based on the fact that they're not using any other running backs in this backfield. Like, they're literally using no one. And who are they playing in week 4? The Chargers. Like, this is like the dream spot for Josh Jacobs to bounce back and have a massive game. So I think that if you need a RB1, like, Josh Jacobs is definitely the guy to go after. But the other player that I put in first before I dove deep onto Josh Jacobs is Rhamondre Stevenson. Now, I want to pose a question to you guys. Where do you think Rhamondre Stevenson ranks in terms of total touches so far through 3 weeks?
I don't know that I even have a guess.
Yeah, it's probably still pretty high, right? Is it
so
not?
Like top 10,
I would
top
say
20,
top. I would
15?
say top 12.
Yeah, I was gonna say 12 as well.
Okay, he's 6th. He has 18 plus touches in 3 straight games. But the way that people talk about Rhamondre Stevenson, oh, well, Zeke Elliott's taking his job. Oh, yeah. Zeke looks great. Oh, he looks better. It's like, no, that's like not the case whatsoever. Rewatching this Patriots-Jets game, it's like, they're going to give the ball to Zeke because they're grinding out clock in the fourth quarter. Like, that's really more of Zeke's role in this offense. How many games are the Patriots going to be up on a team in the fourth quarter? Please, someone explain that to me, because it's not going to happen with their schedule. Like, what we saw for weeks 1 and 2 is really more what Patriots games are going to look like versus when they're playing the Jets and they can actually control the clock and control offensive pace of play. So for me, Rhamondre Stevenson, again, 6th in touches through 3 weeks. This is what we wanted to see. He just hasn't ripped off these massive efficiency games because it's been tough matchups. Like the Eagles, good defense. He was efficient against the Dolphins, but that's when he had his best game. Okay, great. And then last week against the Jets, again, another good defense. Now he's facing Dallas this week. How do you beat Dallas? Run game. And if they're not beating through the run game, what's going to have Mac Jones get the ball out quick, throw it to Rhamondre Stevenson, who still has the dominating role as a receiver in the Patriots backfield. So although people are putting waivers in to pick up Ezekiel Elliott in this revenge game against the Dallas Cowboys, like, don't do that. Like, Ezekiel Elliott's like my last ranked running back that I want to add off waivers this week. I'll be totally honest. And maybe they give him a pity touchdown because he's playing Dallas. Oh, we got to get Zeke to score. Whatever. Rhamondre's going to be way more involved if this game gets out of hand and Dallas is up. It's going to be Stevenson out of the backfield, catching passes, 18 touches per game the last 3 weeks. That's what we want from our bell cow backs. So I think Stevenson's a sharp buy low guy with all the shine on Ezekiel Elliott because he had a bunch of carries, had more yards than Rhamondre, and Rhamondre hasn't had that really big game yet, which I think is going to be coming when the Patriots are facing some negative game scripts with their upcoming schedule, and just their schedule overall just very, very tough.
It might not be that negative of a game script if the Cowboys play anything like they did against the Cardinals. That's maybe not as much of an obvious game script as we expected. If you guys are anything like me, fall is unquestionably your favorite season. There's nothing I love more than seeing the colors change and feeling that crisp autumn breeze. It just feels like football. I love fall camping, going to games, pretty much any outdoor activity this time of year. And the only thing better is spending fall outside with friends and with beers, but not just any beer. Miller Lite, the 96-calorie beer that tastes like beer and is perfectly brewed for everything summer and fall have to offer. In fact, I just went camping with some friends the other weekend, so we had to pack the travel coolers full of Miller Lites, sitting around the fire that night, swapping stories and inside jokes, all while cracking open another Miller Lite. It's heaven, whether you're spending evenings around a backyard fire pit, enjoying a football game with pals, or sharing laughter amidst the rustle of falling leaves. Live those autumn moments with Miller Lite. With a Miller Lite in your hand, fall doesn't just taste great, it tastes like Miller time. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/FantasyPros. That's MillerLite.com/FantasyPros. Or you can find it pretty much anywhere that sells beer. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Guys, let's get to our sell high running backs here. Coop, who you got?
Yeah, for me, I am looking to move on from Kenneth Walker. And it sounds crazy because he's been the boss so far, man. Just had 2 touchdowns this week. But those are the games where I like to sell. We say it all offseason. It's funny, all offseason we sit here and we say touchdowns are fluky. We're not going to chase touchdowns. And then 2 weeks in, what do? We look at, Jake Ferguson getting a couple of end red zone targets and we're like, I have to have him. He's my guy, right? So You look at Kenneth Walker coming off these 2 touchdowns and people are going to be clamoring for it, right? Especially in your hometown league, the guys that aren't really digging into the numbers. But quietly behind the scenes, Zach Charbonnet is playing more and more, right? And we talk about those high leverage situations. This week, he actually clawed away an incredibly important one, the 2-minute drill, right? He got every 2-minute drill snap this week. If that is now his job, you get all, as I said earlier, you get all those snaps. If you get one, you get them all. You don't have time to substitute guys out during the 2-minute drill. And the reason it's so hard for rookies to get it is because you need to know the entire pass blocking scheme. You need to know all the audibles, right? Because if they're changing the play at the line and you don't know all the plays, then you're going to be in big trouble. You're going to get yanked out of there. He could lose that job, but the fact that he's already taken it is a kind of a bad sign for Kenneth Walker. So for me, if I could take Kenneth Walker right now, what he is, where he's, a high-end RB1, it looks like, and trade him for, a super high-end RB1, package him up with somebody else to get like McCaffrey or something, or even if I need a little help, trade down for a guy like Miles Sanders plus something where I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be a huge difference. I'm almost getting a guy for free. That's what I'm looking to do. I mean, there's nothing, I'm not saying Kenneth Walker's a bad player. We think he's a good player. Just sometimes these teams realize, wait a second, we have 2 good players. Let's use them both. And I think that might be happening in Seattle.
Erickson, before we get to yours, I do want to get your opinion on Walker because he's a guy that I don't think we've maybe talked about enough on all of our shows throughout the weeks here to start the season. So quickly, Erickson, what do you think about Walker?
I think he's more of a hold for me right now because he's playing the Giants this week. So it's like, he could be in line for another big game. So I'm like, man,
you could go way
I don't know
up,
if I want to move him. And then they have a bye week. So you can look at it as, okay, I'm not going to have him for the bye week. But the thing with Seattle right now is their offensive line is so hurt. Like, they're going to get healthy. So I don't know if I really want to move Ken Walker because, okay, maybe the touchdowns don't sustain, but he's still getting a lot of carries. He's still getting pass game usage outside the 2-minute drill. So for me, he's probably still a hold player. We did see Charbonnet's role increase, but that didn't come at a lack of volume for Ken Walker. Like, they're still using him a lot, and he's cashing in on the touchdown regression that he was going to be getting this year. Like, last year, he was so bad in the red zone. Like, he didn't score at all. And this year, you're starting to see that positive regression kind of kick in where now he's scoring red zone touchdowns left and right. Like, that's not a fluke that he's doing that because he's still seeing that red zone role. So, yeah, it's not great that Charbonnet's taken over more of the 2-minute drill, but if Walker's still getting the goal line touches, like, I will still value that probably over, an elite usage where he's also being the 2-minute drill. So for me, he's still a hold.
And who's your sell high running back?
Alexander Mattison. Oh my God. Alexander Mattison. Sell. We didn't want you to draft him. And then he finally had a decent week in week 3, which, I mean, it could have been disastrous for Alexander Mattison. Like, he's dropping passes in the red zone. He's fumbling the ball, even though they overturned it. But for me, look, this team had no reason to bring in Cam Akers. They didn't have to do it. I know they basically traded nothing for him, but they still brought in another running back because they weren't happy with what they got from Alexander Mattison during the first 2 weeks of the season. So again, Mattison was good in week 3 from a statistical standpoint. We just look at the box score. He played a very high percentage of the snaps. Ty Chandler's not that guy. Like, Ty Chandler's not going to be eating into Madison's workload anytime soon. We've seen it for 3 straight weeks. Like, they haven't used him in any capacity, but Cam Akers has chemistry with Kevin O'Connell. Dates back to their days with the Rams when Cam Akers was a bell cow at points. So the fact that he's now joined the roster, that's added competition for Alexander Mattison, who really through 3 weeks has underwhelmed, in my opinion. So I think that Mattison is someone that I would like to sell off a big game for his standards, even though he has struggled, I think, more than people would want to admit, especially people that drafted him highly, thinking that he would just be the guy for this backfield long-term. I'm a little bit skeptical of that. And when you're 0-3 as a team, coaches shake things up. Like, they're 0-3 for a reason because things haven't been working. So what do? You make changes. It would not surprise me at all if we start to see Cam Akers work in a little bit more. Again, wasn't active this week because he just got traded, but I would not be surprised if Cam Akers takes over this backfield. And I know people will point to, oh, well, his success rate sucks. He's not good. Well, he's in a different offense now. Like, it's totally different. And it's not about how good he is, but how much better is he than Alexander Mattison? You know, people drafted Mattison because he was the best of the worst backfield. Well, now how much better is he than Cam Akers remains to be seen, and I'm not too confident that he is that much better, if at all, than Cam Akers is. So for me, I would just kind of like wipe my hands clean of Alexander Mattison after he had his best game of the year in week 3.
Let's rapid fire some listener questions from Twitter quickly before getting out of here. I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this one because we talked about both these guys during the show, but from Kevin, rest of season half PPR, Jerome Ford or Josh Jacobs? I assume you guys are both taking Jacobs.
That's highway robbery.
Yeah.
If you can get Josh Jacobs
like
for Jerome Ford.
Yeah. With questions like that, it's not even a matter of should you accept it, but prepare yourself to argue whether it should be vetoed.
Yeah. That's a great point.
That's what you got to be thinking about.
Next question here. With Joshua Kelly failing to produce in a favorable matchup because the offense abandoned the run, is it time to drop him, Erickson?
No, because Austin Eckler still isn't back yet. So I'm not going to drop a starting running back for the Chargers because no one's threatening his workload. Yeah, it was a bad game, but if he scores a touchdown at the goal line, like, no one's complaining about Josh Kelly. He just didn't score. So he's not the greatest running back, but I'm not going to drop him until Austin Eckler is like practicing and is healthy.
Coop, I see you nodding, so I'll just give you the last question here from Caleb. Would you drop Justin Fields for Jordan Love?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I mean, with just the thing about, especially in single QB leagues, all we care about at a certain point is upside. And Jordan Love, if he were coming out and throwing 300 yards, 400 yards, that's something that I think is more sustainable, more indicative of good play, as we've seen with some of these teams. Like Tua threw a right-handed shovel pass touchdown that was like a 2-yard pass. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has touchdown passes every week that are like, anyone could have thrown it, realistically. So throwing 3 touchdown passes doesn't impress me as much as throwing for 300 yards. And right now, Jordan Love didn't really look that impressive this week. So I really need to see more from Love before I drop a guy that has the mobile upside of Fields. Fields has been bad, but we've seen that how high the floor is if he just runs an average amount.
Yeah, Erickson, I know you're all in on stashing Fields and not dropping him. So is it fair to assume you would not do this?
It's the conversation is much closer than it's been in past weeks.
Last week, you were pretty emphatically don't get rid of Fields, so this is surprising.
Well, I mean, we're getting more and more data, and he's not running as much as we'd like him to see. I mean, Jordan Love rushed for 39 yards last week. Jordan Love had 9 rushing attempts last week. So if you're layering Jordan Love now, okay, maybe he has a rushing floor. He's thrown 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. Did Justin Fields throw 7 touchdowns last year? I don't know. So, that's concerning for me. And I think that for me right now, again, if I have to make a choice to pick up a guy like Jordan Love, who is surging right now without his best weapon, why isn't Jordan Love not going to continue to be good? We've seen him play 3 games. He's 7 touchdowns, like I said. And there were drop touchdowns all over the place against the Saints. Like, he could have thrown 3 touchdowns again. So I think you just want to ride the wave now. If I need to start a guy this week, like, I'm probably going to start Jordan Love. He's playing the Lions. Like, why can't he produce, again, at home? He doesn't even have his best players on the team. Aaron Jones has missed games. Christian Watson's missed games. Like, what happens when those guys come back? Like, is Love going to be worse or better? Probably better. So I guess for me right now, it would probably be Jordan Love.
To Erickson's point, you said that last week he was on Justin Fields, and then the Bears organization probably had the single worst week an organization could possibly have. Did they not? I mean, from every angle, it was atrocious. So saying something last week to this week for that particular organization, I have no problem with changing your opinion over that span of time.
Yeah, nothing. Somebody pointed this out on Twitter. Nothing more needs to be said about the Bears other than they got a national network to cut away from a game that Taylor Swift was in the stands for. That's how.
I was watching that game and I was very confused when the second half came up, and then I'm watching Cowboys Cardinals. I'm like, what's going on? Like, I really wanted to see like how this game played out, and of course they're
Absolutely
like, they made the
insane
decision for me.
Yeah,
you did not. Spoilers. You did not want to see how it played out.
No. All right, we'll get out of here on that. For Erickson and Coop, all the Andrews, I'm Ryan Wormeli. We'll see you guys again next time.